Morning guys, welcome to the video. Hopefully you've seen the title and clicked on the video because you think this might be quite interesting to watch. Last week I was here in Eastbourne and going around the course, the Beachy Head Marathon course, for the first time since I won in October, and I kind of thought it might be a good idea to video myself go around and try and show you guys some of the key hard/difficult points in the course, and throw a few tips in there. Now it's a week later, as I said, today, just when I'm filming this intro clip, and I thought I'd just film it because when I was editing the clips together I realised the video is quite long and not everyone has, like 50 minutes to watch a video. So I thought today what I'd do is film this intro and then film a little summary which I'll put at the end of the video, where you can just skip straight to if you only have like 5 minutes to watch. And in there I'll just quickly go through like 2-3 minutes what happened in the race, and then 2 or 3 minutes of like what I learned, kind of things I learned from doing the race, and then maybe 2 or 3 minutes of just like tips. So I'd say it's just a week later here. Look, it's a beautiful day in Eastbourne today. It's about 5 degrees and there's no wind, so I've actually got like a 65k, well I'm hoping to do 65k today, over to Lewis and back. So maybe I also film some stuff today also to throw in. Morning guys, so it is January the 12th, 13th, 14th and 15th, not sure. But I am here in Eastbourne, back where my parents live. And I thought I'd make a video showing me go around the Beachy Head Marathon course and going through my thoughts about the race this year that I won, and hopefully giving some tips for people who maybe think they're going to do it, or people who've done it and struggled. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy the video. Hopefully you can see that it's pretty much a perfect day here in Eastbourne today. It's freezing cold, but the wind is down, which is the key thing, especially when you're running Beachy Head. So when you arrive in Eastbourne, everyone meets here at the Helen Garden, I think it's called. It's just by St Bede's School, and it's just where everyone lines up in the road for the first climb. Apologies for the cars there, it's going past. Hopefully I can show you the first climb here, which is the St Bede's Hill. Now it doesn't look like much, and I think it's about 150 meters to the top, maybe a little bit less. But you go from a heart rate of pretty much, 120 to possibly up to your threshold, or maybe even slightly above it. So it's kind of a bit of a shock to the system going up it. The front runners will kind of run it, not at a great pace, but they'll get up running. And if you're just a runner who, is middle of the pack or near the back of the pack but just enjoying it, it's most likely that you'll walk. Last thoughts, I'm literally on where the line is here before the first climb, which is behind me. So as lining up, my goals for the race was to win if there wasn't someone who is like a semi-professional or professional, because I knew my fitness was at kind of my best fitness has been. But if you look at times that have won it when, like semi-professionals or professionals are there, that was probably going to be about 10 minutes too much for me. So the goal was to win it if there was only kind of a club level standard, rather than, kind of a sub-elite standard. Leading up in the week, we had the worst weather, and it seemed to climax on the day of the race. I remember looking at the forecast, and it just kept getting worse and worse. So on the day we had 50 mile, well I think it was 40 or 50 mile an hour winds, hailstone and torrential rain, and the course was waterlogged. So in some ways that took pressure off me, because in the back of my mind, when I kind of signed up, I thought 3 hours would be an achievable time with a big block of running and, you know, the right conditions and everything going well. And I also knew that in years where there wasn't like a pretty high level semi-professional professional running it, 3 hours would kind of win it. So that was my goal, which kind of went a little bit out the window time-wise when I knew the forecast was just going to be awful. So then it just became about a tactical race and just trying to win it. So you can probably hear me breathing. I've just come up, just only the first half of the climb. Now this is what catches people out. This actually is kind of a bit of a hidden climb, because you think you reach the top at this point here, but actually you've got more of a climb behind it. It does then level out a little bit, but there's still more climbing after that. So, as I say, most people walk this bit here. I've jogged what must be 200 meters back to them. My heart rate's gone from 120 to like 165, and you can hear my breathing. So I remember on race day, coming up this hill, my thoughts were, don't be the guy who's first, because we had this like 40-mile-an-hour wind battering us in our face, and it's very easy to overdo it on this first hill. As I say, like even me jogging up now, I'm not that fit, but my heart rate's got up to 160 like virtually straight away. And if you push too much, you're gonna go into the red pretty much. So it was actually a Worthing guy who ran up this hill, and I just stuck in behind him and kind of just used him as a windshield, which is a bit cheeky, but you know, it's racing, and if he wants to be the first guy, then fair enough. Yeah, so as I said, as you come up around the top of that first climb, you take a right, and you're basically going to follow the ridge line past the Eastbourne Downs Golf Club, and then for a few more kilometres before going downhill into the first town, which I can't remember the name of. I'll say it in the next clip, or put a little note on the screen now. But this is the part in the race now. You've done the first hard bit. You want to settle into a pace that you know you can sustain, and it's not too hard. You get to the top of the climb, you wing a right, and then you're pretty much straight for about 5k. And kind of the first bit to note is that you'll hit a road here, which is kind of the road out of Eastbourne to Eastbourne, and you'll run up to the golf club, which is here, and you'll go on this gravel path for about, about a k, 2k's before turning down. Is it Alfriston or Alfriston? I can't remember which town it is. But yeah, this was the part in the race where Tim, who I didn't realise but had won the race before and has the second fastest time, I think, he came here and he started dropping like 330k's, and I thought to myself at this point, oh, Jesus, right, that's a bit too heavy for me, because as I mentioned at the start, this first part of the course was into the wind, and the wind was 50 miles an hour that day. So you're really working hard to hit a 330 pace on this track. So what was going through my head was, just let him go. If he is that good, he can run 330s all the way around, then he's just going to be a better level runner than me, and there's nothing I can do about that. So I kind of just let him go, and the Worthing guy tried to stick with him, and he was about 10 meters behind him for the next few kilometers. So yeah, that was my thinking. And I had a bit of a nightmare here actually. As you can see, there's like stones here. I managed to trip over, cut my knee, cut my hand. That got the adrenaline going, but I kind of dusted myself really quickly, got back up, and just carried on running. So on the day it was kind of a little bit like this, muddy. Obviously it was raining a lot and very windy. But this descent is kind of chalky, so it's not too bad. And at this point, I remember I'd kind of closed the gap back to Tim and the Worthing guy. And I think at the top of this descent, I think he was about 10 metres ahead of me, Tim. And kind of my strengths are, well, I would say one of my strengths is descending, definitely. I'd say I'm mediocre at climbing and kind of mediocre on the flat. So at the top of this climb I start descending and I straight away catch up to Tim, who I think was having a little bit of traction issues on the day with his shoes, which, you know, in the weather wasn't ideal for him. But I remember I was descending at least 30 seconds quicker per kilometre than him. So down into Jevington, I think we either went through Jevington together or I was slightly in front, but I think we went through together. Yeah. So we're at the bottom of the Jevington descent. It's a pretty technical descent actually, because there's muddy parts and there's chalky parts, and then like the last 800 meters is kind of like broken up bricks and kind of, I don't know, almost like old building material. So it's quite easy to fall over, to be honest. Just one note on like descending, it is a skill to kind of acquire really, and it does take practice. But if you're going to do it fairly aggressively, you need to have pretty strong muscles in your thighs and your hamstrings and your calves, because they will take a pounding. But it's certainly, if you can master it, a pretty easy way to get a big advantage, in my opinion, because you're not having to put overly too much effort into it to, you know, going downhill versus uphill. And, you know, if you're good at it, you can definitely make time. I'd say if you're trying to get some tips for it, try and be relaxed in your body and almost use your arms and your upper body as a counterweight, as the kind of the surface throws you around a bit. So don't be afraid to kind of, you know, use your arms, let them flail left or right if that helps balance you. So yeah, and just like to recap what's happening in the race at the moment. So it was, I think, Tim, me, and possibly the Worthing guy. We came down into Jevington. You turn a left here off memory, and then a right, and there was a drink station where you can pick up a drink and stuff. And then it's the next climb to Alfriston Forest, which is a short one. It was very exposed to wind on the day, and at this point the rain had pretty much set in and it was kind of nailing us in the face. I'll just give you a little update halfway up the climb just to show you how narrow it is. It's pretty hard to overtake or do anything on that climb really. Yeah, just to show you the climb here out of Jevington. It's just like single track. But as you see, none of it's actually level. So as soon as you put your foot down, the slope is forcing you one way. So you're almost having to like push off from one side to the slope, jump to the other side to put your foot down to push off again. And I remember this climb quite vividly because this was the point in the race where we're still early doors. And I was just sitting in behind Tim, I think it was, or the Worthing guy on this climb. And I thought to myself, oh my God, we're actually like crawling up this climb. This is so slow. And I felt I was feeling pretty good. And kind of looking at them, they looked like they were kind of putting out more work than me, at least, well, it felt at the time. And due to the wind conditions, the wind direction, we were just getting nailed from this direction here, up this climb. As I say, this is a pretty steep climb as well. Maybe like 300 meters just up to that top hedge there, and it levels out a bit more and you get another breather down into Alfriston Forest, I think it is. But yeah, this was kind of the first point in the race where I thought, all right, I'm feeling good, I may be good enough on the day to win this, although it's still very early, right? We're only 7k into the race, so a lot to go. So we just made it to the top of the Jevington climb, as you can probably hear. I am very blowing up my arse, but heart rate like 168, which is pretty much my lactic threshold. Yeah, so top of the climb here. Just wanted to say that when you're climbing, if you can't sustain the effort over the top part, as you see here, this is the top of the climb, and then you follow this track, and then just 50 meters there, you can start going down. If you're putting so much effort in that you get to the top here, and you have to stop, you're probably going too quick, right? Because you're probably going to spike your heart rate way past your lactic threshold, and then end up walking. And the people behind you who've judged it a bit better, yes, you would have made some ground on the climb, but they're just going to come over the top and just run straight past you and not go into, go past the lactic threshold and maybe even start working anaerobically. You got to remember, this is a long race, and you want to be in that high zone 2, I would have thought. Certainly not pushing it over, your lactic threshold. Definitely, otherwise you're going to use your glycogen stores way too quick. So this part here, again, it's a downhill, really nice, but this is the woody part, and it's not as chalky. And on the day, I remember Tim, me, and I can't remember if the weather guy was still with us at this point. We got to the top, and Tim was probably 5 meters in front of me, and we started descending, and our descending paces were just so much different. I just went straight past him, and I could see, I think he was definitely struggling with his grip at this point. And this is the muddiest bit, because I saw him put a foot down and kind of slide at one point. I thought, oh my God, I'm lucky that's not me, even though I didn't have the biggest lugs on the day. So I go past him and descend to the bottom of the descent, and then there's another climb out, a really nice climb, which is kind of steady, back out up to the top. So I got to the bottom, just ahead of him, and on the climb back up to the top, we kind of just kept a similar distance, like 15-20 meters between us two, all the way up to the top. So yeah, so when we got to the top, I knew it was going to be really exposed again to the wind, and I just thought to myself, tactically, is there any point of me pushing on my own, or should I just wait up, because he's only 15 meters behind me, run together, maybe take it in turns, or if he wants to push on, I'll just sit in behind him. So tactically, I got to the top of this next climb, which I'll show you in a minute, and then just literally stood there and waited for him. So yeah, you've made it to the top of the climb at Alfriston Forest, and just the other side of that hill, I think it's the Longman of Wilmington. So you come up over the top of the climb, it's flat for about 500 meters, then you get on this gravel path here, and if you see, you go up around the rim there, around the ring along the top, and then descend down into, I think it's Alfriston, down over there, kind of over there, which you see my fingers pointing now. This point in the day was so exposed to the wind, especially up the top over here. And as I was saying before, I made a kind of the conscious decision to stop. Literally, I think I stopped here and waited for Tim to catch up, basically, because I knew the wind direction was going to nail us. It was kind of very rainy in the face, and just thought, coming back to what I said at the start, is it's going to be a tactical race, and there's no point like burning unnecessary matches just to hold like a 15-20 meter lead. And also at this point in the race, it seemed that he was a bit faster on the flatter sections, and I was better at either climbing or descending. So yeah, I didn't think it was worth trying to put extra effort in on these flat bits when he has like this he's quite a tall guy, and he had a natural stride that was just bigger than mine. He just said it's a cold day today, but it's nice. On a sunny day here, it's absolutely beautiful, as you probably expect. This is just the ending point of the climb here for the Longman of Wilmington, which is just like the other side of just this mountain here, I think. You probably have like a 200-300 meter kind of flattish downhill until you reach the top of the descent into Alfriston. Yeah. The top of the climb, at the top of the descent into Alfriston. So as you see, it's like this kind of farmer's track here, very chalky with kind of like big rocks, uneven. So it's kind of an easy descent, but at the same time quite technical, because if you're not confident, you'll probably come down here quite slow. But if you are confident in descending, you can kind of fly down here. And because it's chalky, it's not too muddy, and you do get some good traction. So I remember at the point of this race, me and Tim were with each other here at the top of this climb, at the top of the descent, and I just went straight past him. And he was probably descending like 350, 4 minutes a k, and I was descending at 320, 330 a k. So by the bottom, I'd put a fairly decent gap into him, to be honest. And that was this was the point where I thought, this is, a good point to make a move for the race. I know it's still early, but if you know the second half of the race, it's pretty tricky. It's pretty the hardest part of the race. And in my opinion, it's good to run fast in the first part of the race rather than the second part, because the second part is just very steep hills, your legs are knackered. We're just at the bottom of the descent now. That brings you into Alfriston, which is just behind us over here, just in this, that. At this point of the race, I think I had gapped Tim by about 300 meters maybe, just in the descent alone. But as you can see behind us, it's kind of like this open field that you have to go. You have to go kind of this way and then that way, and then you'll make your way into the town. So I could kind of look over my right shoulder and see where he was. And yeah, so out of Alfriston is kind of the next big climb. And also there is a drink and aid station kind of thing. So I'll show you where the climb starts. So I just wanted to show you, this is kind of the middle part of the climb here, out of Alfriston. Now I'm not sure if the video does it kind of justice to how steep it is. So just around that corner there's a bit of tarmac. It's fairly steep, I would say maybe 8 to 10% gradient, but it kicks up here. And the surface is not as good, obviously. And if you can see, just where those two people up there head, that's where it flattens out. So if you're coming up here, it's most likely that if you're part of the lead pack, you're running pretty slow, almost a snail's pace. And if you're the middle pack or the back of the pack, you'll be walking this. So yeah, don't be afraid to walk this bit. It's like pretty much very steep. The steepest probably part apart from the Seven Sisters on the course. And it does flatten out, so make sure you don't burn out before you get to this leveling up bit up here. Yeah. Alrighty, so we've now made it to the top of the climb, pretty much, or at least the bit where you're on the top now, out of Alfriston. So we've just come from Alfriston down there. We descended from up, kind of over there, down through the town and up to where I am now. And we're kind of on the top, if you can see behind me here. It's not the easiest to see, is it? Yeah, so we're on the top here. So you go up here for about another 1.5 kilometers, and then you're going to take a left, which will bring you kind of, let me see if I can get it in my finger. Yeah, the other side of there. Yeah, so there, sorry, there you go. Which takes you there on that ridge line, all the way back down. And if you can just see the sea over there, that's kind of our end goal, because we will be climbing out of there and along the Seven Sisters back to Eastbourne. So yeah, that is a pretty tricky climb, this one out of here, so it's going to hurt everyone pretty much. And then the next bit here is, to say, a few kilometres on the flat, and then there's like 5k downhill. So yeah, you should be trying to push on that 5k downhill, or at least trying to maintain a good pace if you can. At this point in the race, it kind of had settled into me being about 400 metres ahead of Tim, and that seemed to be holding pretty steady. Yeah, so I was holding steady. This was the last bit into like the wind and the horrible rain, pretty much into our face at least. And yeah, we had the downhill and then back to Eastbourne. So we have made it to the furthest point away from Eastbourne now on the course, and probably done 60% of the climbing maybe. So we came out of Alfriston, up the climb, then it's a little bit further than you think on this kind of rolling flatty section on the top, and you come down here and there was a drinks/aid station just here, and then you take this right on this farmer's track. Again, it's kind of flattish, rolling but downhill, and kind of takes you around, and the goal is to be down in like X-Heat down over there in Seven Sisters car park. So it's about 5k of downhill running. So going through my head at this point was just stick to a good tempo, run. The weather was at its worst at this point, to be honest, but it was downhill and the surface is not too bad, so I was trying to stick around the 4 minute a k mark, I think, roughly off memory, and the goal was just to get down to Litlington in one piece, because I know then the last 16k is kind of the pain cave where you just have to hold on and just fight the demons almost. At this point I kind of could look over my shoulder and see that Tim was about 400 meters behind still. So yeah, this is still on this kind of farmer's track on the downhill to Litlington. On the day, maybe it wasn't this bad, but there was certainly kind of spots like waterlogged like this. So yeah, not ideal. Okay, so we're about 3k, maybe a bit more into the descent here. We've been running down this farmer's track, and as I probably mentioned in the previous clip, you got this like awful hailstone into your face, and I couldn't see exactly where I was going, and I missed this turning here, so I kind of went straight. And I don't know if you can see in the horizon there's cars moving. That's the road, so I ended up taking the long route, right? I kind of went straight and it goes a bit more right, instead of cutting the corner and staying in this field here, and it goes left and down and then crosses the road over there. So at this point I was still about 400 meters ahead of Tim, and I probably haven't mentioned it, but obviously we hadn't seen anyone else in the race at the moment. I was at the front and I could only loosely see where Tim was every now and again behind me. So yeah, I kept on going, and then when I was about 100 meters before the road, kind of down this direction over here, but to the right, I was like, something's wrong here. I think I might have gone wrong, because I came out of the road and I was kind of panicked at this point, because you spend all summer working hard and then you take the wrong turn and you could throw a race away, right? And as you're kind of panicking, you're thinking, is it a left here? Is it a left here? I know the area all right, but I wasn't sure. Then I was like, so I stopped on the road, basically, scrolled down to my map. I was trying to work out, zoom out. Am I going left here? Am I going right to get back on track? All the while, Tim behind was kind of catching up. And then I kind of just, calmed a bit and realised, well, I've got to go left, haven't I? Because that's the way back to Eastbourne. And at this point I could see Tim catching up, and I had like this thought in my head, do I now wait up for him and run as a pair again? Because I kind of thought this would be a 2-horse race kind of thing, just me and him. And he was kind of catching up with me because I'd completely stopped because I was kind of panicking a little bit. So funnily enough, I turned round and he'd also gone wrong, and sorry, I forgot to mention this, he also followed me and went wrong. So I could see him also missing this turning here, which I don't know why they didn't have a marshal for. It's just stupid really, but it is what it is. It's my own fault. So we're quite funny. It's like almost like a 60-mile-an-hour limit road this here, and we're running down the left hand side of it, trying to get back onto the course and meet up to it, just down over here. So I was kind of panicking, and I knew my dad and my brother would be kind of somewhere over there also, kind of cheering me on. And we ran down the middle of the road, and we managed to meet up to where the proper car crossing bit is, where if you went left here, you would have crossed the road further down this bit over here. And I kind of said to my dad, I've gone wrong, obviously. How many people are in front of us? Because obviously I was leading. We've run an extra, I think it was about 800 metres to a kilometre. I'd stopped, and we had no clue how far anyone was behind us anyway. So it was a possibility that I was so far ahead it didn't make a difference. Or maybe the guy in third was now in first because me and Tim had both gone the wrong way and run extra distance and given up a lot of time. So I asked my dad that, and he said, yes, there's one guy ahead now. So at least one guy, he said. So at this point in the race, I was starting to cramp up a little bit, and I kind of had a bit of history in my previous race of cramping around this stage. And it had been a hard first half of the race, right? We've had running into wind, 50-mile-an-hour winds and all this kind of stuff, and I was unproven at the distance as well at this kind of race effort. So I was a little bit mentally I don't know if to say weak, but I was a bit down because I put all this hard work in all summer. I'd gone the wrong direction. I was winning the race quite comfortably, really, and I'd just blown it basically, and I was cramping. And anyone who knows the last 16k will know that it's the hardest part of the course by far. It's not very runnable. It's kind of steep up and down. You have like 300 steps or something ridiculous. And my head wasn't in the right place really. But I'll give you an update on the crossing about what happened when I saw the guy. Can I squeeze past? Just get out of your way. Sun has just come out, beautiful, isn't it? And so as I was saying, this is the final bit of the descent. The road is just literally behind me now, and I said I went wrong. So me and Tim were running down this main road, and at this point here, my dad was here, and I could see. I don't know if you can see where those people are walking. Maybe about 50 meters ahead of them was one guy, and I wasn't sure if I was still first or not, or third. The thing to remember also was that the ultra was going on, so it could have been that was just one of the ultra runners, and obviously they set off an hour earlier in a different race. So, but I remember being here, legs were pretty tired, and I was cramping in my hamstrings, which is worrying because you'll see in a minute this next 5k section. You go down to here, along this ridge line, I think. And then down to there, in the forests. You go up these stairs, through the forest and back down. into Exeat car park, or Seven Sisters car park, whatever it's called. And at that point you've got 10k to go, but this little section from down the bottom here to the car park is pretty tricky, and I think catches people out because there's stairs in there, and if you're struggling at this point, you know, you can almost grind to a halt, which, you know, I mentally was kind of down a bit because I'd given away, well, I didn't realise if I'd given away the first place or not, but I knew I had to catch that guy who was just in front of me down there, who was Tom. First climb out of Litlington isn't long, but it's bloody steep, and at this point your legs are pretty knackered, and it's kind of a little bit of a shock to the system as well, because you've been going downhill for almost 5k, right? So maybe like 25 to 40 minutes depending on what pace you're running, and then you've got this kind of steep, probably no more than 150 meters short climb here, and not the best of kind of track as well. Yeah, so this is like the little climb out of Litlington. So I just wanted to stop here. This is kind of the descent which leads you to the stairs, into, you know, into the stairs that take you, steps, sorry, that take you up into this forest section here. I don't know if it happened to anyone else, if anyone's actually watching this videos, but as I said, I was cramping, and you see like this turn thing, you have to stand over, step over thing, and you coming down there at a good pace, right? Maybe like sub 4 minute a k or something like that, and then you try and lock on the brakes, and it's even more muddy than this. And at this point, I kind of slid for about 2 meters, and my hamstring completely locked up with cramp. And I was like, oh my god, how the hell am I going to get back to Eastbourne with this type of cramp? And, you know, am I even got a chance of catching the guy ahead of me? Because at this point, Tom, the guy who was in third until me and Tim went wrong, he was still about 100 meters ahead of me, 150 meters ahead of me, going into the steps, which I'll show you. These are the stairs here, right? And imagine you've got heavy legs, it's wet, rainy, and this was all overgrown here. They've cut it back, definitely. And you're just kind of forcing yourself up here, like maybe trying to use your arms to pull yourself up. It's pretty brutal, to be honest, and mentally draining. You went to the top of those steps, you know, put an effort in to get to the top, heart rate was going crazy, levelled out, you went through the forest, and it's kind of a nice little downhill actually, and you come just through here, this road here, and you're greeted with even more stairs that are even steeper and longer, so pretty mentally hard. But once you get to the top of those, you then pretty much go down into Exeat Seven Sisters car park, or whatever it's called, and I'd say it's the final stretch from there. It's the last 10k, and yeah, it's pretty tricky, to be honest. So we made it now to Seven Sisters Exeat car park. There was a drink/aid station just down over here, and you turn kind of lefty up here, you follow this ridge line all the way kind of up to the top of there, and you go down the other side, I believe. At this point in the race, Tom was about 30 meters ahead of me, so we're like really close now at this point. I was still kind of mentally fighting the demons of how to try and give him the lead, which must have been at least a 5-minute lead on him probably. But I just thought in the back of my head, even though you're cramping and it's still a long way and probably the hardest bit to go, just sit on his back. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like the Tour de France cycling, when you got the GC riders and one's struggling and they're trying to break him and he's just trying to sit in the back of the wheel kind of thing. So yeah, sorry Tom if you're watching this, that was going through my head at that point. It was just like, follow him up the climb, sit on his back, and hopefully maybe the cramps will go away or it'll get easier at some point. So pretty much that's what I did. and probably by the top of this climb over here, or certainly that one over there, the ridgeline over there, I was just sat behind him, and yeah, so that's kind of what was happening in the race at this point. That climb there out of the St Sisters car park, and you get a small bit of respite here on the downhill before probably what is maybe the hardest climb, because we roughly follow, we go down here, you follow like a ridge line and you make your way up to the coast, probably over there somewhere where my finger is, and you're running on against the slope. It's kind of leaning towards the sea, and you're kind of fighting it as you're going up the hill, and it's pushing you sideways down. But yeah, so the other thing to mention actually was, so as I said, the first half of the race, the wind was completely into our face and, you know, battering us basically. But now, even though it's the hardest part coming up of the race, the wind was behind us, which was kind of one thing that helped a little bit mentally as well. I'm not sure, for me personally, with cramp and everything, knowing that if the 50-mile-an-hour wind was into my face, that could have broken me even more, really. But yeah, I'll try and show you a bit of this next climb up over here. It's pretty hard. I'm pretty sure I'll be maxing out. So this is this first part of this climb. We just come down here, down this here, sorry, and start here. And you see it's kind of banked away. It's pretty steep. And at this point, as I was saying before, I was just sitting in the back of Tom, kind of letting him do the work. Well, it felt like he was doing the work, but we were both going so slow because the, you know, the tiredness in the legs and stuff. So where we're going to end up is, if you can just see in the distance, there's some people on top. You probably can't see them, but yeah, you just run around this ridge line up to the top there, and then it's a straight shoot back to Eastbourne. You just have to go over some very steep but short hills. To the top of the climb here. Just here we're going to turn left here back to Eastbourne along the seafront, sorry, along the coast. This is pretty much where it opens up. Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? And we've just come from down over here. I don't know if the video shows it, but what I was talking about, there being a bank. So you're constantly fighting this slope here. It's not too steep, but it's just continuous for a while. And yeah, so I remember at this point here, I was still sitting on the back of Tom, and what was going through my head was similarly just hanging there for a bit longer and see what happens. He didn't seem to be like distancing me on the climbs, because I was just sitting on the back of him. And as you'll see, hopefully I can get a good view back over to Eastbourne here. But on the downhills, they're quite steep, but very, you know, you get like a 200 or 300 meter downhill into one of like the big Seven Sister short steep climbs. And it felt to me that on the downhills, I was faster than him. And then on the uphills, it was kind of even, but maybe he just felt a bit better and stronger in his legs. So yeah, this is the view back to Eastbourne. So all the way in the distance, it's kind of where Eastbourne is just the other side of these hills here. The one thing I forgot to say actually was that when I came up behind Tom, I asked him, "Oh, what race are you running?" Because at this point we weren't sure if he was an ultra guy in the Beachy Head Ultra or Beachy Head Marathon race, and I didn't know if I was first still after going wrong direction, or if he was first, or you know, whatever was happening. So I think I asked him, and it was maybe a confusing question to him at the time. He's like, yeah, you know, I mean, he said he was in the marathon race, and I asked him, "Oh, is there any people in front of you?" And he didn't realise that me and Tim had gone the wrong direction, and actually he was in first place. So there's kind of like this weird, confusing back and forth. I think I asked him twice, you know, who were the people in front of you, and you know, was it me basically. And I think we kind of eventually established that it was me, and it was me and Tom fighting out for first at this point. Just as a note, like when I was kind of looking back, Tim at this point had really dropped off. I think the efforts in the first half, maybe fueling and the shoe choice kind of took its toll a little bit. And just one other thing to note, like looking at my Strava, because I was cramping, I had to reduce my effort level to just to basically survive to get back, which meant my heart rate came down. Oh my god, look at these idiots down here right on the edge. So my heart rate came down a lot. And when I was asking Tom, who's in first, is there any people in front of you, blah blah, I must have been speaking like, when you're working hard, you're panting, but because my effort level had come down, I was kind of just wasn't breathing too hard. And I don't know if that kind of threw him off a little bit, because behind that mask, I was actually cramping up to hell, and knew if he put any kind of surge in, he would have broken me. But if you just listen to my voice asking the questions, it almost seemed like I don't know if it felt like to him like I was taking the piss a bit, because I was just sitting on the back of him, my breathing was fine, I'd already kind of was 5 minutes ahead of him or whatever it was before I went wrong, and yeah, so I don't think he realised how much I was hurting at that point. And yeah, so now we just have these, I think these are literally the Seven Sisters. So they go down and then they go aggressively up, like almost you have to walk it basically, power walk it. I mean, maybe some of the pros would be able to run them, but if you're just wondering how big or how steep these climbs are, hopefully this video does it a little bit justice. Yeah, they're pretty brutal, but they're only short, right? They're kind of one of these ones where your heart rate goes crazy, you get to the top, you go run downhill, you recover your heart rate, and then you go up the next one and your heart rate goes crazy again. Yeah, they're pretty brutal, but you got to remember, at this point in the race, everyone else is hurting, and you're nearly home, and everyone's kind of walking up them basically, so you're not really losing time if you're kind of thinking about places. But you remember earlier I said that I think it's best to run the first half fast as you can, because it's quite hard to make up time in the second half. This is kind of what I mean. If you don't blow up in the second half, so obviously run the first half sensibly hard, but if you don't blow up, it's pretty hard to gain large amount of grounds in this terrain, in my opinion, if the person in front is not blowing up as well. If they just keep a moderate effort in front, for you to go above a moderate effort on these kind of climbs, it's just going to put you anaerobic straight away. Whereas I feel in the first half, the climbs are, they're fast, they're runnable, whereas these, maybe Killian can get up here, or Tom Evans, but not us mere mortals, definitely. So we're at this point in the race now, maybe 5 or 6k to go, and we're coming up to Birling Gap, and there's this big hill here, but actually you cut inland and you take just this track up here. And in the point of the race here, what was kind of happening was, I think on the downhills and flats I was distancing Tom a bit, and then maybe he was gaining a little bit on the climbs. But definitely after this climb here, I think I've pretty much walked the top part of it, but I jogged the first half. And then on the descent the other side, it's quite a big descent again, and I gapped him. And from that point on, I think I then kept extending away from him. I think maybe he thought, oh no, that's kind of, he put his effort in to stay close to me maybe. But yeah, some people run down the hill here. They're going to break their legs by the looks of it. So we now made it into Birling Gap car park. It's probably, isn't it, like 4k left of running, maybe 5, I don't know. It's not long, but you've done the majority of the climbing. and you kind of come in from just down here, down this hill here, and luckily the way it's routed for Beachy Head, you don't actually go up the steep climb out of Birling Gap here. There's like this kind of windy road, sorry for the noise, there's this windy grass path here that kind of goes around. It's less steep and basically doesn't make you run this really steep hill. At this point I was ahead, I had a lead on Tom, but I wasn't sure how far it was, and it was just a situation of like I didn't want to look back as well at the time because I was fully concentrating on not cramping up further and, you know, throwing the race away again kind of thing. So yeah, it was just like head down now, put in, you know, a big 15-20 minute effort, a constant effort that I can maintain on the way back, and the victory is mine really. So we're nearly back to Eastbourne now. This is the final climb up here, and God, mentally, if you'll run this race, you just can't wait to get to the top of that hill, because you just know there's about a kilometre of flat and a bit of a downhill, and then you're there, done, completed. But at the point in the race here, I think when I was halfway up this hill here, I kind of glanced back to see if I could see where Tom was, and I couldn't see him. And this is probably the first point I kind of guessed without cramping up or dying in the last bit, the race was mine kind of thing. And thankfully that 50-mile-an-hour wind was behind us, like perfectly behind us. So it acted, you know, your body acted like a sail for the wind, so you kind of got pushed up this climb. Yeah, it's not too hard, but it's just a long gradual drag up to the top. So the sun's setting now, and we've just made it pretty much to the top of the final climb. You can see really far back in the distance is where we come from. It's over there. Just go over this last ridge here and then down into Eastbourne. As I said, I knew I'd won at this point, barring any cramp where I was on the floor basically and couldn't move. Yeah, so you just get to the top of this bit here. This is the last bit of the climb. Maybe I'll run you up. Yeah, and you're pretty happy when you see the sight of the kind of pub thing there. It means the pain's probably over in about 5 or 6 minutes. You've got about 1 kilometre on the kind of rolling, flatty, a little bit up here, but it's going to be down just over there. And then you've got the descent down into Eastbourne. Final descent into Eastbourne now. 3 hours of running, or just short of probably 3 hours to this point where I am. Kind of funny little story actually. So there was one of the ultra runner guys, the race guys, maybe I think it was the guy in second. His kind of, you just go down this muddy track here, and he was in front of me and I was gaining on him, and obviously I've been battling with cramp and stuff, and it narrows out down there, and I'm flying down probably around 4 minutes to K at that point, so not super quick but quick, and try and go around the outside of him, hit a muddy patch, slip, get cramp, grab onto him and nearly take him off the side. Luckily I think my shoes got some traction, his got some traction at the same time, but it was kind of funny actually, because we both went into the bushes. It was definitely my fault, so you know, if he's watching this, I'm sorry mate, I didn't mean to. But yeah, it's about 1 kilometre now maybe, all downhill. This is when mentally you know the job's kind of done, whether you're going for the victory or you're just happy you've completed the distance, because you know it's a big achievement to do.
Come on, Ollie!
Yeah, so roughly 4 hours later we made our way back to Eastbourne. Remember that hill at the start? Now you're glad you're going down it, but on the day this was very muddy and it's very steep and your knees at this point are hurting quite a bit. So I'm glad that I'd already built quite a bit of a lead now at this point on Tom in second, and it was just about getting down and celebrating the win really. Yeah, so if you've made it this far in the video, or if I even put this up on the internet, well done, you've got more patience than me. If you're thinking about doing the race, it is hard, but it can be done to different levels of ability. So if you want to race it, it's a hard race. If you want to kind of power walk it and have a good time and socialise, you can do that also. I think the cutoff's pretty generous, and even though it was a really bad weather day, you know, people's spirits are pretty high. So thanks to everyone who organised it and all the marshals and stuff. Yeah, it was a nice chilled loop today. I didn't push at all. I was trying to video all this stuff, so.
Number 2049.
Yeah, so the summary of the race really was that the result went to plan, but it wasn't the smoothest of races. To start off with, we had like the awful weather, which kind of threw a new element into the race. It meant that timings kind of went out the window. So I was roughly aiming to run 3 hours. I ended up running 3:03 in the weather, which I was really happy with actually. But yeah, so the race started off on the seafront in Bexhill, and you got the first climb, and I took it pretty chilled up that first climb because I just didn't want to overdo it. And then the race settled down quite quickly into the people who might be challenging for the win of the day. So there's a guy called Tim who, as soon as we got onto the top, he just started putting a really good pace together for the first like 8 to 10k, which was quite quick. I just tried to stick with him as best as possible. There were a few points where I thought the pace was a bit too fast for me, but over the first 10k it kind of leveled out. So in the points on the flats where he was a bit quicker, I caught back up onto the climbs and descents, and that was kind of the pattern of the race really for the first 10-15k really. I think on all the descents I was much faster, and on the flats maybe it was a bit faster, but by the time we got to Alfriston, there's a long descent into Alfriston, and I just gapped him at that point. And from there, the climb out of Alfriston and the descent back into Litlington, we kind of kept a similar distance of like 400 metres apart. There was a bit of drama on the descent into Litlington. So there's a small left turning about 5k into the descent, and I managed to miss the turning. And yeah, so we ended up running an extra kilometre, which wasn't ideal. I was in first and Tim was in second, but he also went wrong, which meant that potentially it wasn't an issue, I was still first. But what actually happened in the race was that the person in third then came into first. So then took the first place. So into Litlington, about 25k into the race, I was in second, and it's kind of the hardest bit of the course, the last 16k is. And at that point I was cramping as well, so it was pretty worrying. And I wasn't sure how I was going to catch up to the guy in front and then try and win the race. So through the forest, you go up these stairs into the forest and then down into Seven Sisters car park. I managed to claw onto the back of Tom, who eventually came second, who was leading at that point on the Seven Sisters climb. And then on the Seven Sisters back to Eastbourne, for the first half we settled into a pattern of pretty much on the descents I made a little bit of ground. I think on the climbs he was a bit faster. But then one of the descents just before Birling Gap, I descended much faster and pulled away from him, and then extended all the way to the line to take the victory. So yeah, it was an eventful race because of me going wrong and the cramp. Really battling the cramp was so mentally hard. But that was kind of the summary of the race. Obviously really happy result, and the time was really good. I think it was good for at least 10 minutes in the day. And it was a tactical race as well. I wasn't like trying to nail a good time, I was just trying to win. So there are points in the race where I actually stopped because I thought it was tactically better to run as a pair with Tim at the time. Yeah, so now some things that I personally learned from the race, which I will try and think about and improve going forward for my next races. The first one is kind of obvious, but I think we as all runners kind of ignore it. In training, there were signs that were worrying about your body giving you signs about all potential weaknesses. So for example, I'd always had a tight left hamstring in training, and especially when I did harder efforts, and that was kind of the warning sign that I should be strengthening it and doing more work on the hamstring specifically. And in the race, which I had 4 weeks before it, which I won also, I had massive cramps in my hamstrings. So the first thing I kind of personally will take away is that every time I'm doing a hard session, I'm going to try and review what my kind of body's saying after the session. It's still saying I've got a tight left hamstring, so I still need to work on my hamstring strength, I think, and maybe some mobility. So that's definitely what I'm going to look at going forward, because as the races get longer as well, these small little niggles, they're going to show up way more often, especially with a race effort. The second thing, which I think is kind of the most important thing I learned, is that not to give up. I mean, it's easy to say, but so in the race, I obviously gave away the first place, and I had to try and catch up about 200 meters on the guy in front, and had horrendous cramps. And the kind of thing I've learned is that just stick in the race for an extra 10 minutes. You're going through this pain. I was thinking, how the hell am I going to get back 16k with cramp, my body seizing up, and all these really hard hills? But I just said to myself, look, just stick on the back of him for 5 more minutes. And then every 5 minutes, just kept doing that. So that's kind of what I learned, is that when you're struggling, just stay in the race for an extra 5-10 minutes and see if you can, refuel or you'll get back better. You always see it in the cycling, right? In cycling, where when the GC riders hits a flat spot and they're just trying to survive, and they've got their teammates all around them, just trying to keep them in the race. Just so normally if they miss the fueling or something like that, they can refuel and then feel better in 10 minutes. So that's kind of one thing I learned, and then I'm going to take it forward because I've got longer races coming up as well, where I need to be mentally tough in that sense, where it's going to hurt at some point, and I've just got to stick it out and stay in the race for an extra 10 minutes and keep fighting for it. So yeah, that was kind of the second thing I learned, which is kind of obvious, but I'm quite proud of the fact that I kind of persisted with the race. It would have been easy just to throw the toys in after I went the wrong direction and gave up the lead, and things started to go wrong. So I was pretty happy with that. And then the third thing, which is kind of a basic mistake really, but I don't think I mentioned it in the video at all, but I set my watch up slightly wrong in terms of the average pace. So when I was on the line, there was a delay. I loaded up the navigation, and I pressed start because I wanted to make sure that the course would load and the watch didn't crash and all this kind of stuff that I was a bit nervous about. So I pressed start and then pressed stop straight away. But then the race was delayed by 10-15 minutes, and the way kind of the average pace works on the watch is that it's done on the elapsed time, I think, from the start. So basically I didn't have any clue what the actual average pace I was running. Not that it made a difference on the day because I wasn't going for a time, but if the weather was good and I was going for a good time, let's say trying to beat 3 hours, which was my original goal, I would have been really confused about what was happening with the average pace. So yeah, just such a simple thing, set your watch up correctly, Make sure you got the correct data screens there and you understand what they actually mean, because yeah, you don't want to be just thrown off by something simple like that. And then some general tips for people who maybe want to do Beachy Head. So it's an extremely hard race, right? Especially if you don't have you have little experience at doing kind of ultras or mountainous race or hilly races. The first thing is obviously you've got to train a lot, right? It's 41 or 42k the race, but probably with the hills it probably plays out like a 60k race if you're going to run it on the flat. And if you want to do well in those kind of races, your body has to be used to running those distance. Again, it's obvious, but if you want to do well and run it at a good pace, then pretty much as much mileage as your body can take without injuring itself will probably help, in combination with specific workouts that help with hill climbing and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, make sure you've done the training in terms of your body being used to the distance. That would be the first tip, definitely. Second tip, if you can get out to the course, right? Beachy Head is quite an interesting course because the first 25k is pretty fast, right? It's really runnable up the hills, and they're not too steep, they're not too long, fast downhills. Yeah, it's really runnable. But if you don't really know the course, you might be lulled into like a sense of security that it's this easy all the way around, or I don't need to save a bit of energy for the last 16k. And if you did that, it's classic each year. Someone will blow up because they don't know how hard the last part of the course is. So yeah, if you can get down to the course or something very similar, you're going to be a massive advantage, especially with the Seven Sisters. You can't really imagine how steep they are unless you're on them, really, or how brutal they are. They're not long, but they're just so steep and leg burning. So yeah, if you can get onto the course, you're going to have such a big advantage over your competitors if they haven't been on the course before. Especially if you're trying to run a fast time, because you have to plan your kind of race if you want to run a fast time, in my opinion at least. So yeah, that's probably the second thing. And then the obvious ones are kind of nutrition. You got to be trying to hit at least 60 carbs per hour, but if you can get up to 100 or 100, even 120, they say these days for some of the pros, the more you eat, the more you eat and the more you stomach, the better. Yeah, so nutrition and drinking, obviously. Drink as much as you, if you sweat a lot, drink a bit more and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's 3 kind of general tips. Yeah, and that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I don't really expect too many people to watch it, but guess for me it's kind of a little bit of a memory of what happened in the race, which will help for next year, hopefully. I do plan to run it next year, and hopefully to run a better time. I've got a busy first 6 months coming up of the year. I'm training pretty heavy now for my first race in Croatia. Then I've got 2 races in the Canaries, which one's going to be super brutal. That'll be like a survival mission for me, I think, just because it's my first time at the distance. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to this next 6 months. Hopefully I stay injury free, and hopefully your running's going well as well. Put any comments down below if you enjoyed the video. Tell me what races you're running. If you have any questions, let me know if you want to kind of see any of my training, or if you want to see some of the training, some of the sessions that I'm doing at the moment.